Invite our speakers back for the Q&A. Unfortunately, we've lost Lauren, who is she's got a pitch. So it's myself, Peter, and Abtin who can answer questions. There's been lots of conversations going on. I've seen lots of good questions on the live event as well as on social media. So I'm going to try and distribute these questions in a sensible fashion. I'm going to kick off with Peter, and it's a really great and a fairly generic question. What's the biggest challenge facing AI startups in the north for health tech?
Hello. So it's a good question, and I think that there are a number of challenges, and I'm certainly going to align with what I spoke about earlier and say that regulatory compliance is a challenge, and it's a challenge for a number of reasons. I think one is in terms of the know-how of how to follow the applicable standards that we talked about, and there's a great body of knowledge, I think, in terms of conventional engineered systems and the way that they fail and how you make them safe. And we see that in lots of different industries outside of healthcare, aviation and transportation and nuclear energy, that there are well documented methods of making safe systems. With AI, that's not the case, and I think even regulators are going through a learning process. So I think that's one of the big challenges. Certainly, getting enough funding. I see that there's a lot of businesses that as soon as the reality of what they have to do in terms of risk management and documentation hits, we don't have enough money to do that, and so I think planning effectively for regulatory compliance, getting the clinical evidence you need, and building the technical files that you need for certification is probably one of the big challenges. Okay.
It was going so well. I now had 4 people pointing at the mouth and saying I was muted. Apologies, everybody. If you go to Uzbekistan, which you may be able to go to and visit, you'll find that they have no electronic patient records. So it's a question for Dr. Abtin. In countries where the patient records are not particularly high quality, or they don't even have electronic health records and electronic patient records, how does that affect the ability to do AI and ML type projects?
Well, that's I would say even we don't have proper electronic records. I mean, if you don't look at Estonia, but even in Europe, we don't have that paperless electronic records that we are wishing for. But I know that they are working on that. However, fitting up an AI model or training an AI model doesn't need to have data that is stored in your data records, but rather than you have to describe where you have that data from. I mean, I know many AI models using data from other countries. However, that is a very good question, because you have to, if you take data, for instance, if you take data from Europeans and perform train an AI, and then you want to provide that AI model into I don't know, India, that might be a problem because there are incidences or there are characteristics in the data you find in Europe that you don't have over there. So basically, I can't give you a solution. As you might know, we are a notified body. We are not allowed to give you a solution. Just what I can say is that you have to justify where you have your data is coming from and why you think it is. It shows the targeted population you're talking about, and where you got the data from. There is no regulatory requirement anyway, but there is no requirement on where it should come from, other than you have to just state why that data is sufficient, why the quality of data is sufficient, and why do you think it represents a targeted population. So okay. Basically, I would say by setting up too harsh requirements without giving option to adapt, you will rather stop innovation, which we don't want, of course. If you say, well, you need to have only data record that is safe on the patient system, and that should be only DICOM style data without, and it should be transferred on that protocol. I would say that does not make much sense. You have to just justify your approach.
Okay, very good. But it's an important point that just having data is not enough. Having good data, the sort of garbage in, garbage out point was exceptional. So quick question, somebody's asked about our systems and said, how do we retrospectively validate the triage decisions? We've got a 30-year data set from 140 million patient records across 46 countries, the world's leading patient safety expert. We've produced the world's most widely used patient safety systems. And we did some validation at Karolinska and Imperial, whereby we looked at 800,000 patients, predicted 3.92% mortality rate. It was actually 3.99. And for morbidity, we predicted 27%. It was 26.5, I think. So we've constantly been spending years honing these algorithms to make sure we get them right. Now we're coming up to time. If Peter can manage just to nail one question, that would be phenomenal. Any difference between Europe and the US in terms of the regulatory regimes? Anyone that harder or easier?
It's difficult to say at the moment. I think the FDA are taking a pragmatic approach, and they have published a paper on their future approach to AI. And something that came out of the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon is the capability maturity model that's quite widespread, has quite widespread adoption in the defense and aviation industry, which talks about a business's or a team's ability to put out high quality software, and that you use that as a basis of approval. So it's an interesting approach that you have trusted providers of machine learning software. So you then trust them to put out their software that can modify itself. That's the approach they're taking. I think that it's tougher in the EU. And I guess time will tell. You know, I talked earlier about there being 1,000 deaths a year in England alone due to software bugs. I think when we start to see software or defects in AI leading to patient harms, then I think that's really the measure of who's got the regulation right. And it's always a balance, of course, between benefit and risk. That we can see that AI is going to deliver huge benefits. But how do you balance that against the risk? And I think at the moment it's too early to say who's got that right, but it's probably tougher in the EU than it is in the US at the moment.
Yeah, it reminds me of Tesla, because they said with the self-driving cars, their target was not to get to 0 deaths. They're actually targeting 500 deaths in the US, not to create those, but to accept that alongside an awful lot of people who wouldn't die as a result of AI, some would. And so that balance of benefits, I think, is a great comment, Peter. Thank you for that. For today, thank you for Lauren in our absence. We hope Andrew's well, but Dr. Abtin, Peter, absolute topic experts, and it's a shame we didn't have longer. Hopefully you can appear again to talk about these in more depth in the future. And a huge thank you again to our incredible AI Tech North 2020 Platinum sponsors. That's the University of Bradford and Transition Partners for supporting today's session and making it all possible. Hopefully I'll see you again shortly. Bye for now.